If you are currently renting a home during this pandemic and have concerns about your landlord continuing with their mortgage payments, or if you are a tenant in general and you have concerns about your landlord making their mortgage payments on the home in which you reside, then this video is for you. In this video, I want to go over a few things that you should be aware of and that you can do in the event you feel as though your landlord is not making the mortgage payments on the home in which you reside. But first, a little bit of house cleaning. I'm Chris Nelson with Gemstone Realty, and this channel is all about real estate advice, tips, and tech. So if any of those excite you, you're in the right place. And if you find any value to this video, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment, consider subscribing, and mash that bell so that you're notified of my future content. Now let's just face it, as an investor, which I'm an investor myself, my number one goal is to use my rental properties as leverage. And a lot of times the rental income that I get goes towards things like my car payment, my savings, or maybe even going towards the mortgage for the home in which I reside. Now let's just face it, a majority of investors, when they are faced with a hardship, they're going to take the rental income and they're going to use that to maintain their quality of life, which unfortunately means that they may not continue to pay the mortgage on the property in which you reside. And we all know that when a mortgage payment is not paid, well, technically a foreclosure is possible and probably looming. So in this video, I want to go over a few things that you should be aware of and things that you can do from a proactive perspective to make sure that you are in the best situation you possibly can be. In the event you get wind that your home may be in foreclosure, there's a few things that you should be aware of. First and foremost is that until the home is foreclosed on, that landlord legally owns that property and you are legally obligated to pay rent. There's no way around this. Even if you are aware that those payments are not going towards the mortgage, you still have a lease which says that so long as you reside in that property, you will continue to make rent payments. Now, I know this is a tough situation because you know that your landlord is not using that money to pay your mortgage, but it is still your obligation. And if you don't pay, that landlord still has the right to evict you. So make sure that you continue to pay your rent until you have confirmed that the property has actually been foreclosed on. Not in foreclosure, but has been foreclosed on. At the time the property has been foreclosed on, your landlord or previous owner of that property no longer has a legal right to that property and subsequently should not be collecting rent. But that does not mean that you are not going to continue to make rent payments. At some point, you are going to be approached by the servicer's representative, and a lot of times it is a realtor or someone along those lines who has been tasked to find out, is the property occupied? And if it is occupied, is it occupied by the previous borrower or a tenant? And in this situation, you want to be transparent. You want to make sure that the person who you are speaking with knows that you are a tenant and that you have a valid lease. And you want to make sure that you have a copy of your valid lease to supply to them. In most situations, as long as the lease is a legal lease and not written for some ridiculous duration, the servicer is going to agree to allow you to continue to occupy the property so long as you're now making rent payments to them. Now, if you are on a month-to-month lease, that's a little bit different because now the servicer has the right to give you a notice to vacate. Whatever the language is in your lease, it's important to know whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or whatever that duration may be, because the landlord, which is now the servicer, may decide that it's in their best interest to get you out of the property so that they can go ahead and get it on the market. In my experience, a lot of times tenants try to tell me that they were unaware that the house was being foreclosed on. And although I can't prove that, I find that very hard to believe because here in Pennsylvania, we go through several legal postings. The sheriff is usually going to post some sort of notice on the door, and it's pretty evident what that notice is about. In addition, this information can be found using a lot of public sources that are available to you. Although I'm not a fan of some of the larger real estate websites out there, there are websites that will give you information on what they refer to as a pre-foreclosure. So if you go to some of these third-party websites and you type in the address in which you reside, where you rent, you actually will get a notice on that posting that says pre-foreclosure. If you see that, what that means is that public records is identified that the owner of that property or your landlord is behind on mortgage payments and they have been served what's known as notice of default or lis pendus. This is the very first written communication that in the event the landlord or property owner does not get caught up on their mortgage payments, the servicer then does intend on foreclosing on that home. There are other avenues in which you can confirm this information. Some of them are paid real estate websites, or you can simply go and check your county records because again, this is public information. If you get wind that your property is in pre-foreclosure, well, this is the time to communicate. I'm a big advocate for communicating when it comes to, well, real estate in general, but also landlord-tenant situations. You want to call your landlord and let them know that you are aware that the property is potentially behind on payments. You want to find out from that landlord what their intentions are. Do they have the means of getting caught up? Now keep in mind, if they tell you no, that they don't have the financial means to get caught up on the property and they're doing their best, you are still obligated to write that check every month until they are no longer the owner, because that is your contractual agreement between yourself and the landlord. But communicating with the landlord, letting them know that you are aware of the situation goes a long way. Most landlords don't want to lose their tenants and will do what they can to make sure that everything works out. So letting them know that you're aware and potentially trying to collectively work through the situation has a lot of weight and may keep you from stressing out. Now let's say that your property does get foreclosed on. One thing to keep in mind is that you may not get your security deposit back. Technically, that security deposit is in an escrow account. Well, at least it should be in an escrow account that is owned by the previous landlord. Since the servicer or bank, however you want to refer to it, does not have access to that escrow account, it's impossible for them to go ahead and reimburse you for your security deposit. So this may be part of the communication that you want to have with your landlord if you find out that your home actually is in foreclosure. You may want to find out if it's possible for you to get that security deposit back, or you can find out if the landlord is willing to apply that security deposit towards rent. Again, they don't have to, but it's definitely worth having that conversation because the last thing you want to do is lose that security deposit. A lot of times that security deposit is what's going to help you get to your next property. Another thing that you should be aware of is that in most situations, not all, and I emphasize all, there is an opportunity for the servicer to help you relocate. As a matter of fact, this is a common practice known as CFK, or cash for keys, in which the servicer will make an agreement with you that says that if you, the tenant, vacates the property within a certain duration, usually they go for 60 or 90 days, but again, this is something that you can negotiate. It says that they will compensate you for moving out of the property and leaving the property in a broom swept condition, free of content and personal property. Usually you'll have a walkthrough with someone representing the servicer. They'll make sure that the property is in the condition in which everyone has agreed upon, and then at that point, they will hand over a check for your relocation. So keep in mind that you can always try to negotiate something with the servicer, but there's no guarantee. Not every servicer offers a cash for keys agreement or opportunity, but it's definitely worth being aware of and asking the question. So there you have it. These are just a few simple tips. Hopefully this situation will not be a situation that you have to go through, but if so, remember this video and share it because you never know who may find themselves in this situation as we move through these wild and crazy pandemic times. Not only that, once we get through the pandemic times, let's just face it, people have hardships, and this is information that hopefully will have some value to you and or maybe someone you know. Once again, I'm Chris Nelson with Genstone Realty. This has been another episode of Just the Tip Tuesday, and as previously mentioned, if you found any value to this video, drop me a comment, consider liking, subscribing, and mash that bell so that you're notified of my future content. And with that being said, take care.